So imagine a woman who is on mandatory bed rest. She's pregnant with twins.
Wow.
Right. She's navigating this incredibly high-risk medical situation, just lying there. But instead of just, waiting it out or watching TV, she opens her laptop. Exactly, right from her mattress. And she starts leveraging cloud software to build the absolute foundation of a financial empire.
That is just what?
It really is. Or picture a guy who spent his days agonizing over the exact placement of tiny little rivets on 1.64 scale replica semi-trucks.
Like the little toy trucks.
Yeah, but super precise ones. He's managing $500,000 manufacturing tools in China, and then he suddenly pivots to commanding the finances of multi-million-dollar businesses.
It's definitely not the image that comes to mind when you hear the word accountant, is it?
Not at all. And that is exactly why we are here today. So welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today for you, the listener, is to completely dismantle that stereotype, the boring, stuffy, windowless room financial advisor.
Stereotype.
Yeah, exactly. We are pulling from an incredible stack of transcripts today from the Protea Conversations Accounting Leadership podcast. And I gotta say, this source material is absolute gold.
It really is. We're looking at in-depth interviews with 5 top accounting firm founders. We've got Ryan Brinkman, Justin Stevens, Nancy McClelland, Diana Gleason, and Jennifer Green.
And these are individuals who are radically redefining the accounting industry, really from the inside out.
Yeah, they aren't just changing how the math is done. They are changing the fundamental relationship between a business owner and their financial data.
And the craziest part is how they actually got there. We are going to look at how a professional backup dancer, a music theory teacher, and a guy who desperately avoided becoming a truck driver in the sky.
I love that phrase.
Right, how they built massively successful firms. But I want to be clear to you listening, this isn't just about accounting.
No, not at all.
We are going to extract actionable leadership, scaling, and work-life alignment advice that applies directly to you.
Whether you are an aspiring accountant, maybe a tech CEO, a creative freelancer, or just, insanely curious about how to run a better business, there's a blueprint here for you today.
For sure. So let's jump right in. We really have to start with where these people came from because their origin stories are totally unexpected.
Unexpected might be an understatement, honestly. When we think of the traditional path into high-level finance or accounting, it's incredibly linear.
Right, almost rigid.
Exactly. You go to college, you major in accounting, and you immediately try to get recruited by a Big Four firm.
Okay, actually, for anyone listening who isn't steeped in the corporate finance world, let's define that real quick. When we say Big Four, what are we actually talking about?
Good call. So the Big Four refers to the 4 largest professional services networks in the world. That's Deloitte, PwC, EY, and KPMG.
Massive ones.
Right. They handle the audits and taxes for huge, publicly traded global corporations. And the culture at these firms is notoriously grueling.
Like burnout city.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's an environment where 80-hour work weeks are common. Compliance is king. And you are essentially a tiny cog in this massive, highly regulated machine.
You just put your head down.
Yeah, you grind out the spreadsheets, you get your CPA license, and you just hope to survive long enough to make partner.
Right.
It's a path that heavily indexes on following rules, historical reporting, and, corporate polish.
It's the ultimate safe path, assuming you actually survive the burnout. But the leaders we are analyzing today, they completely bypass that machinery.
They really did.
Their backgrounds look more like an island of misfit toys.
Let's look at Ryan Brinkman. He's the founder of BAC. Ryan grew up as a farm kid in Iowa.
A very different vibe from a Wall Street office.
Oh, completely. He learned what he called the grit and grind of farm life. Early mornings, physical labor, dealing with unpredictable weather and machinery. But he knew he wanted off the farm.
Right.
His big dream. He actually wanted to be a corporate or airline pilot.
Yeah. So he goes to one of the absolute top flight schools in the country. He gets all of his pilot ratings, and he is seemingly on a straight glide path to a career in the sky.
But then reality sets in, right?
Exactly. He takes a hard look at the actual day-to-day life of a corporate pilot. He realizes that flying private jets sounds glamorous on paper, but the reality is you are entirely at the beck and call of billionaires.
Yeah, your schedule just isn't your own.
Right. You miss holidays, you miss family events, and you spend days just waiting around in generic hotel rooms for your boss to finish a meeting.
It sounds miserable.
He famously described the realization as not wanting to be an Uber driver for the rich or a truck driver in the sky.
That phrasing is just so perfect. Truck driver in the sky.
It is. So he completely pivots. An accounting professor spots his natural, almost intuitive gift for numbers. But even then, Ryan doesn't just march straight into a CPA firm.
He takes another detour.
A huge one. Before launching his own advisory firm, he ends up leading an international toy company.
It's just wild.
And he wasn't just sitting in a back office doing their tax returns. He was the director of finance, licensing, and product development all at once.
Which I have to say is an incredibly rare combination of roles for one person to hold.
Right. He was making precision 1.64 scale model replica semi-trucks, and we are talking an insane, obsessive level of detail here.
Like, not just the cheap plastic toys you buy at a gas station.
No. These models had working suspensions, rubber tires, accurately scaled rivets, detailed smokestacks. The manufacturing process was intense.
I can imagine.
Ryan would get CAD files, computer-aided design files from suppliers. He'd send those digital models to engineering teams in China. And he would have to review the physical prototypes line by line, millimeter by millimeter.
Think about the financial stakes of that level of manufacturing.
Oh, it's huge.
If a decimal point is off on a CAD file, or if the translation with the Chinese engineering team breaks down, you don't just get a slightly weird-looking toy truck, you completely ruin the mold. And Ryan mentioned he would spend up to $500,000 just to create a single tool program for a specific Peterbilt or Freightliner replica.
$500,000 mistake if you get a tiny rivet wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What is fascinating here is the specific type of cognitive flexibility he is developing. Yes, he is handling the company's finances, but he's doing it while managing incredibly complex, fragile international supply chains.
Right. He's in the trenches.
Yeah, he is negotiating high-stakes licensing contracts with massive truck brands. He is ensuring absolute microscopic precision on a physical product. He is learning business operations, cash flow management, and risk mitigation in the most hands-on, high-stress way imaginable.
He wasn't just tracking the money. He was watching how every single operational decision created or destroyed the money in real time.
Precisely. Which makes him infinitely more valuable to a business owner later on than an accountant who has only ever seen numbers on a screen.
So true. Okay, let's pivot to Diana Gleason, founder of DG Accounting Agency. Because if you want to talk about a left turn, her story is wild.
He really is.
Diana was a professional dancer. That was her entire identity. She danced for pop stars like Jesse McCartney. She worked with Nick Cannon. She did national musical theater tours.
She was really at the top of that industry.
Yeah, she traveled the country, completely immersed in the entertainment industry. She equated her entire self-worth and identity with her physical ability to perform on stage.
And, in fields like professional dance or athletics, your body is your sole instrument of revenue.
Yeah.
The margin for error is just zero.
Exactly zero. And then the worst case scenario happens. She suffers a severe hip injury. And it's not just a tweak. It requires major surgery. It was a career-ending moment for her. Everything she had trained for her entire life was just gone.
That is devastating.
And as if the physical and emotional trauma wasn't enough, she gets pregnant with twins.
Right.
And it develops into a high-risk pregnancy that forces her onto mandatory bed rest.
It's a profound, terrifying identity shift. I mean, she goes from being literally in the spotlight, relying entirely on physical movement, to being completely immobilized.
But she still had to make ends meet. Before the bed rest, during her initial injury downtime, she had taken a job at a nonprofit just to pay the bills.
Right.
And out of pure necessity, she basically taught herself how to do bank reconciliations on an old version of QuickBooks Desktop.
We should probably clarify what a bank reconciliation is for the listeners who don't run a finance department.
Good call. Simply put, bank reconciliation is the process of matching the balances in your accounting software to the corresponding information on your actual bank statement.
Right.
It's making sure that every single penny leaving or entering the bank account is accounted for and categorized correctly in the books. If they don't match, you have a leak, an error, or potentially fraud.
It's really the foundational bedrock of all accounting.
Yeah.
If your reconciliations are wrong, everything built on top of them, your tax returns, your profit margins, your cash flow projections, is a fiction.
Right. And the person who held the job before Diana at this nonprofit had no idea what they were doing. The books were a total mess.
Yeah.
So Diana, with zero formal accounting training, just uses her analytical dancer's brain, a brain trained to learn complex choreography step by step to untangle this financial mess.
That is such a cool way to look at it.
Right. Fast forward to her being on bed rest. A guy running a remote, cloud-based bookkeeping firm reaches out. He says she can work from her bed on her laptop. And that was her true entry into the field. She built the foundation of what would become a massive accounting agency from a mattress.
Let's look at the underlying psychology there. When Diana eventually sits across from a business owner whose company is failing, whose books are a disaster, who feels like their world is collapsing, she isn't just looking at a spreadsheet.
No, she's been there.
She knows exactly what it feels like to have your livelihood threatened. She knows how to rebuild an identity from absolute zero. That level of deep, earned empathy simply cannot be taught in a Master's of Accountancy program.
Speaking of things you can't learn in a finance class, let's talk about Nancy McClelland, famously known as the dancing accountant.
This story is fantastic.
Nancy majored in music education, and she lands this bizarre, almost comical part-time job in Ann Arbor, Michigan. She is hired to be a music theory teacher for 15 minutes, and then literally for the next 15 minutes, she has to act as the office manager.
Wait, what?
She alternated roles every quarter of an hour.
The context switching required for that is just staggering. Going from explaining the nuances of a diminished seventh chord to figuring out why the printer is jammed or balancing the petty cash back and forth all day.
It sounds like a sitcom premise. But that bizarre dual role eventually leads her to become the full-time business manager for a world-famous violin-making studio.
Wow.
She was literally entertaining famous, eccentric classical violinists in the front room while quietly doing the studio's complex bookkeeping in the back.
She was learning how to bridge two completely different worlds, the highly emotional, abstract world of pure artists and the rigid mathematical world of business survival.
And finally, we have Justin Stevens of Stevens Tax Services. Justin was an English literature major.
Another pivot.
Yeah, he loved stories, narratives, the humanities, and he actively, intentionally ran away from his father's accounting business.
Really?
Yeah, his dad, Lee, was a successful accountant, but Justin thought the whole industry was incredibly stuffy. He had this mental image that all accountants were just these quiet, antisocial bobblehead types who sat in cubicles, nodded silently, and crunched numbers.
Right. It is a pretty pervasive stereotype. So Justin rebels by going into the most high-friction, human-facing industry possible, which is retail sales.
He ends up running a massive $6 million retail electronics store by the time he's 23 years old.
Incredible.
He later works at a Mercedes-Benz dealership selling luxury cars. He is entirely immersed in the world of high-pressure sales, handling angry customers, managing inventory, and reading human psychology on a showroom floor. He was a million miles away from a quiet tax office.
If we pull all of these threads together, a really fascinating pattern emerges here.
Yeah, what do you see?
None of these individuals intended to be accountants. And I would argue that this is exactly why they're currently dominating and redefining the industry.
Okay, let me push back a little here.
Sure.
Are we saying that a traditional accounting degree is useless? Because, I want my accountant to know the tax code. I don't want them guessing on my corporate returns because they were too busy selling Mercedes or dancing in a musical. Is there a danger in romanticizing these non-traditional paths too much?
That is a highly valid pushback. And no, the technical degree is absolutely not useless.
Okay.
The technical knowledge, understanding the tax code, knowing GAAP, which is generally accepted accounting principles, that is the mandatory cost of entry.
Right.
You cannot play the game without it.
Right, you have to know the rules.
But what we're looking at is what separates an adequate accountant from a transformational advisor. The traditional path teaches you how to read the numbers, but it inherently isolates you from the messy reality of how those numbers are created.
It's
Exactly. It's clinical. But business is not clinical. When Justin Stevens is running a $6 million retail store, he is learning consumer psychology and inventory cash flow panics firsthand.
Yeah.
When Diana Gleason is facing a career-ending physical injury, she is learning a visceral level of grit. When Nancy McClelland is managing brilliant but chaotic musicians, she is learning how to translate highly technical concepts to non-technical emotional people.
So they learn the soft skills first.
They learn human behavior, resilience, sales, and complex problem-solving first, and the mechanics of accounting second.
They learned how the machine works on the factory floor before they ever looked at the blueprint. So for you, the person listening to this right now, maybe you're sitting in a cubicle or maybe you're managing a team. I want you to think about this. Is it possible that the highly polished, traditional, linear path actually stifles the empathy required to be great at your job? Are these misfit origins actually their superpower?
The evidence from these sources overwhelmingly suggests yes. These unique backgrounds didn't just give them interesting cocktail party stories. It forced a fundamentally different approach to client interaction. Because they didn't fit the traditional mold, they couldn't pretend to be traditional accountants. They were forced to bring their whole, unfiltered, authentic selves into the boardroom.
Which brings us to a really crucial, almost aggressive concept that comes up repeatedly in these interviews. The idea of weaponizing your authenticity.
Weaponizing is a strong word, but in the context of modern business strategy, it's highly accurate. They are using their authentic selves strategically to build an impenetrable moat around their businesses.
Let's talk about the go-go boots, because this is my absolute favorite story from the transcript.
It's so good.
So Nancy McClelland starts her own firm. And at first, she succumbs to the pressure of the industry stereotype. She tries to do what you're supposed to do. She goes out and buys the boring gray suits, the conservative blouses.
Yeah, she tries to look like a traditional, stodgy, serious financial professional.
She was trying to put on the uniform of the Big Four, even though she was a solo entrepreneur. But it just wasn't her. It felt like a costume. Because the real Nancy loves the 1960s. She loves go-go dancing. She is obsessed with 1980s jazzercise.
Which, as an incredible side note, she has actually led full jazzercise sessions at massive, formal accounting conferences.
No way.
Yeah. Imagine hundreds of CPAs in a ballroom doing grapevines to synth pop.
That is amazing. So Nancy lives in Logan Square in Chicago. For those who don't know it, Logan Square is this quirky, vibrant, deeply artistic, shop local kind of community.
Very hip.
It's full of creatives, chefs, and independent makers. And one weekend, she is at a local park for a community event. She is dressed in full, authentic 1960s gear.
We're talking white go-go boots, a vintage miniskirt, the hair, everything.
She is about to teach little neighborhood kids how to go-go dance. And suddenly, she looks across the park and freezes. She realizes two of her most important accounting clients are sitting right there on a blanket having a picnic.
The absolute panic of worlds colliding.
She is terrified. She is thinking, oh my God, these people are paying me to manage their complex tax strategies. They trust me with their financial secrets. And I am standing here dressed like an extra in an Austin Powers movie.
Oh, no.
She was convinced they were going to fire her on Monday.
It's the fear of being perceived as unprofessional. It's a paralyzing fear that dictates the behavior of millions of professionals every single day. We hide our hobbies, our quirks, our true personalities because we think the corporate world demands absolute, sterile conformity.
But she doesn't run away. She takes a deep breath, walks up to say hello, and the client sees her, points at her, and says to his kids, look, it's the dancing account.
And just like that, the tension evaporates.
Not only did they not care, they loved it. And in that exact moment, a massive light bulb goes off for Nancy. She realizes she doesn't have to hide.
Right.
In fact, hiding was hurting her. The dancing accountant becomes her official, legally registered brand. She literally puts professional headshots of herself wearing go-go boots right on the homepage of her CPA Wow's website.
This is where we transition from a fun anecdote to a masterclass in strategic positioning. What Nancy discovered is how authenticity acts as a highly efficient, automated business filter.
Okay, unpack that.
When you are unequivocally, unapologetically yourself, even if that self is perceived as weird or niche or unconventional, you achieve two massive business goals simultaneously.
Break that down for me. What is the first goal?
The first goal is repulsion. You instantly repel clients who are a bad fit. Think about it. If a highly conservative, rigid corporate CEO who wants a traditional, quiet, gray-suited accountant goes looking for a CPA in Chicago, they might stumble onto Nancy's website.
Yeah.
They'll take one look at the go-go boots, decide she isn't serious enough for them, and click away.
Which sounds bad on the surface. You just lost a lead.
But it's actually a massive win. It saves Nancy the immense headache of onboarding a client who fundamentally clashes with her personality.
That makes a lot of sense.
We all know that managing a misaligned client relationship is the worst part of any service business. They drain your energy, they question your methods, they demand communication styles you hate, and they ultimately destroy your profit margins because everything takes twice as long.
So by flying her freak flag, Nancy automatically filters out the energy vampires before they ever schedule a consultation.
Exactly.
Okay, so she repels the wrong people. What's the second goal?
Intense attraction. The filter acts as a magnet for her ideal demographic.
I see.
The local business owners in Logan Square, the independent coffee shop owners, the freelance graphic designers, people who are terrified of corporate suits and want an advisor who actually feels like a peer.
Yeah.
They see Nancy's website and think, yes, finally, someone who gets me. They don't just want to hire her, they are excited to hire her.
Yeah.
She built a hyper-local, deeply connected, incredibly lucrative practice simply by being herself out loud.
Diana Gleason utilizes this exact same filtering mechanism, but her angle is slightly different. She isn't wearing go-go boots. Instead, she branded her entire agency as the judgment-free bookkeeper.
This is a brilliant psychological pivot. Diana noticed a recurring massive barrier when she spoke to prospective clients. Business owners weren't just coming to her looking for a service. They were coming to her filled with intense, paralyzing shame.
Money shame is so real. People attach their moral worth to their bank accounts.
Exactly. They were deeply embarrassed that they hadn't reconciled their books in 2 years. They were embarrassed about how much credit card debt they had accumulated. They were terrified because they hadn't paid their payroll taxes and were ignoring letters from the IRS.
And let's be honest, as a financial professional, it is really easy to be judgmental in that scenario. You open up a prospective client's QuickBooks file, and it is an absolute disaster. Personal expenses mixed with business expenses, duplicate entries, missing statements.
It can be a nightmare.
The natural instinct for an accountant is to sigh, shake their head, and say, "What a mess."
Which instantly reinforces the client's shame and makes them defensive. But Diana intentionally disarms them.
How does she do that?
The very first thing she says is, "Take a breath. This isn't the worst I've seen. We can fix this. Don't worry." And then she takes it a step further with a highly specific onboarding process.
This blew my mind when I read it. Traditional accountants will usually look at a messy file, calculate how many hours it will take to clean it up, and just email over a massive, scary invoice for thousands of dollars with a one-line description like, "Historical bookkeeping cleanup."
And the client has a heart attack.
Right. Diana doesn't do that.
No, she uses technology to scale her empathy.
She records a customized Loom video for every single prospect. She shares her screen, opens up their messy accounting software, and records her face in the corner. And she just talks to them like a friend sitting next to them at a coffee shop. She points her mouse at specific areas and says, "Okay, see this account right here? This is where things got a little tangled. Here is why it's causing a problem on your profit and loss statement, and here's exactly the step-by-step plan my team is going to use to untangle it."
She completely removes the mystery and the shame from the process. By humanizing the data, she builds an incredible foundation of trust before a contract is ever signed.
Yeah, because there is no sticker shock when she sends the proposal.
Exactly. The client has seen the exact scope of the mess with her own eyes, guided by someone who isn't judging them. That transparency, married with deep compassion, is her authentic superpower.
Jennifer Green, the founder of Jade Consulting, echoes this philosophy perfectly when she talks about hiring. She runs a team of 15 fully remote women spread entirely across Canada.
Right.
When she conducts interviews, she doesn't start by grilling them on complex tax codes. She explicitly tells interviewees, "I need you to bring your authentic self to this first call."
That's a great approach.
She tells them that technical software skills like knowing how to navigate QuickBooks Online or how to set up automated document fetching in HubDoc can easily be taught via a training manual. But being a great, empathetic, communicative human being, you cannot train that into someone.
This raises a critical point about the evolution of the modern workplace. We are seeing a massive shift away from the purely transactional nature of B2B services.
Right.
Clients no longer just want a faceless service provider who executes a task. They want a partner. They want to know the human behind the screen. If AI and automation are going to handle all the robotic tasks, the only differentiator left is your humanity.
Okay, I hear you, and it sounds beautiful, but I have to play devil's advocate here. I want you, the listener, to think about your own go-go boots. That weird, quirky, deeply personal passion you hide at work, but in a corporate world that, frankly, still writes the checks and heavily demands polish, conformity, and professionalism. How much weirdness is too much? Let me put it this way. If I show up to pitch a Fortune 500 board of directors,
That is the essential caveat that often gets lost in the just be yourself advice. Authenticity is not a substitute for competence. It is an amplifier of it.
say that again.
Authenticity is an amplifier of competence, not a replacement. Your go-go boots only work as a strategic business advantage if you are simultaneously delivering incredibly elite, undeniable value.
Okay, that makes sense.
Let's look back at our examples.
Yeah.
Nancy McClelland isn't just wearing fun costumes. She is a deeply educated, fiercely intelligent CPA who went back and got her master's degree specifically so she could offer high-level, bulletproof advisory work. Diana Gleason isn't just a nice person who smiles on a video. She possesses the technical chops to completely rebuild a shattered corporate financial foundation from scratch, ensuring compliance with the IRS.
Right. If Nancy's tax strategies resulted in audits, nobody would care how cute her boots were. They'd sue her.
Exactly. You can be as weird, as niche, and as authentic as you want, provided you are delivering a product or service that is fundamentally superior. The authenticity is the hook that gets them in the door and the glue that builds the trust. But elite competence is the foundation that keeps the house from collapsing.
Let's unpack that concept of elite competence because it perfectly bridges us into how the actual job of an accountant has radically changed. All of these leaders talk about moving beyond the basic blocking and tackling of balancing books or filing taxes.
Yeah.
They are stepping into a role that looks much more like being a business therapist.
The entire financial industry is undergoing a massive tectonic shift. For decades, the accountant's job was essentially that of a historian. They lived in the past.
Looking in the rearview mirror.
Exactly. A historian's job is to gather the artifacts, in this case, the receipts and bank statements at the end of the year, categorize them, report on what had already happened 12 months ago, file the required compliance paperwork with the government, and that was it.
Post-mortem.
The conversation was, here's what you did last year, sign here, pay this bill.
Which is completely useless if I'm a business owner trying to figure out if I can afford to hire 3 new employees tomorrow.
Precisely. The historical data is too stale to be actionable. Modern financial leaders are no longer historians. They are co-pilots. They are looking through the windshield, sitting next to the CEO, helping them navigate the future in real time using predictive data.
Ryan Brinkman is the poster child for this evolution. At his firm, he developed a proprietary process he calls vision planning. And Ryan, true to his Midwestern farm roots, is not afraid to be incredibly blunt with his clients.
Oh, I bet.
He will look a successful CEO in the eye and literally tell them when their idea is, quote, dumb.
Which, from a psychological standpoint, requires a massive, almost dangerous amount of relational trust. You cannot tell a client who pays you thousands of dollars a month that their idea is dumb unless they implicitly, without a shadow of a doubt, trust that you have their absolute best interests at heart.
And he earns that trust by finding solutions, not just saying no. He gave this highly specific, brilliant example in the transcripts.
Right, the motorhome.
Yeah. A client comes into his office, sits down, and says, hey, Ryan, I want to buy a massive luxury motorhome, and I want to write the whole thing off on my business taxes.
Classic entrepreneur request, trying to make a personal lifestyle purchase tax deductible.
Right. So if this client goes to a traditional compliance-only accountant, that accountant looks at the rule book, says, no, that's illegal, it's a personal vehicle, you can't do that, and ends the conversation.
And the client leaves frustrated.
Now, if the client goes to a shady, unethical accountant, that guy says, sure, wink, wink, we'll hide it under marketing expenses in the numbers, which is a ticking time bomb for an IRS audit.
Both are terrible outcomes for the client.
So what does Ryan do? Ryan acts as the co-pilot. He says, no, you cannot just write off a luxury motorhome for your family vacations. That is a dumb idea and it will get you audited. But let's look at the actual goal.
It digs deep.
Exactly. He says, you want the motorhome and you want a tax advantage. Are you willing to do a little work? Because if you lease it out when you aren't using it, if we list it on rentmymotorhome.com, we can legally create a Schedule E rental structure for it.
Let's clarify what a Schedule E is for the listeners. Schedule E is a specific tax form used to report income or loss from rental real estate, royalties, partnerships, and in some specific cases, leased equipment or vehicles.
Right.
By turning the motorhome into a legitimate income-producing rental asset, you can legally deduct the expenses, like depreciation, maintenance, and insurance against the income it generates.
Exactly. Ryan takes the client's desire, forces them to operate within the strict boundaries of the law, but utilizes the gray areas creatively. He solves the emotional desire of the client while maintaining absolute financial integrity.
He is advising on strategy, not just reporting on history.
We cannot overstate the emotional weight of this kind of advisory role. Ryan mentions in the interview that because financial advisors are dealing with the most critical survival tool in a person's life, their money, the conversations inevitably bleed beyond the spreadsheets.
Yeah, they really do.
Spouses come into his office to discuss business succession, and they start arguing about their marriage. He frequently finds himself acting as a mediator, a sounding board, a voice of reason in deeply personal family dynamics. He asks them profound questions like, where is your life's wheel out of balance, and how can the structure of your business help solve that personal problem?
Justin Stevens experienced the ultimate emotional weight of this responsibility. His story about taking over his firm from his dad honestly, it's cinematic. It's incredible.
It really is.
His father, Lee, had built the firm, but had been battling cancer for 7 long years. At one point, the cancer kept recurring in his arm, and Lee had to have his arm amputated to save his life.
Just awful.
And despite that, Lee still completed 1,000 tax returns that year. With one arm.
The sheer raw grit of that is astounding. It speaks to a level of dedication to his clients that borders on heroic. For many small business owners, their tax accountant is the only professional who truly understands their struggles. Lee refused to abandon them.
So we arrive at April 8th. The federal tax deadline is exactly 1 week away. It is the absolute peak of chaos in the accounting world. Lee is in the hospital, and his body is finally failing. It is clear he isn't going to make it.
Yeah.
Justin, who, remember, had been running retail stores and actively fleeing the accounting world his whole life, goes to the hospital room, and his dad looks at him, stops him, and says, "Look, I'm giving you the football. Take it and run with it."
The ultimate passing of the torch, under the most stressful conditions imaginable.
And Justin does it. He steps in. He handles the immediate, terrifying crisis with his stepmom and his mom. He files the emergency extensions for all the clients so nobody gets penalized, and he gets the immediate triage work.
But he doesn't stop there.
No, he doesn't just put a Band-Aid on it and sell the firm. He fully commits to the legacy. He decides he has to become an expert fast. So he starts studying for his enrolled agent exam.
EA exam, which is no small feat. Explain the EA for us, because people usually just hear CPA. What is an enrolled agent?
An enrolled agent is a federally licensed tax practitioner empowered by the U.S. Department of the Treasury. While a CPA is licensed by a specific state, an EA has unlimited practice rights before the IRS on a federal level.
Okay, so it's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. To get it, you have to pass a notoriously brutal 3-part comprehensive exam covering individual tax, business tax, and representation and practices. Most people with accounting degrees fail parts of it on their first try. It is a grueling test of complex tax code.
And Justin, the former English major and car salesman, self-studies and passes all 3 parts of the EA exam in just 7 months. He does this while actively grieving the death of his father, while learning how to run a complex tax business, and while managing client panic. And then he proceeds to personally prepare 7,800 tax returns over the next few years.
It's a phenomenal story of resilience. But what is truly remarkable from a business perspective is how that crucible shaped his philosophy.
Yes, because he easily could have jacked up the prices. He has a monopoly on these inherited clients, but he maintained his dad's legacy of keeping things incredibly accessible.
Right.
He charges around $200 for a standard tax prep. He still uses physical folders for older clients who like them. He gives 30 minutes of free consultation to any client outside of tax season just to check in on their lives. Why does he do this when industry gurus are all shouting to raise your prices and fire cheap clients? Because when you sit down and personally do 700-800 returns, you realize that every single file is not just a data set, it is a household. It is a family trying to pay for college, a single mom trying to afford groceries, a small business trying to keep the lights on. He remembers the human pulse behind the 1040 form.
He is deliberately humanizing a service that the rest of the industry is desperately trying to commoditize and automate. Nancy McClelland is fighting a very similar battle on the bookkeeping front.
Yeah, she is.
She created an entire online platform called Ask a CPA, specifically to combat the toxic, dismissive stigma in the industry that someone is, quote, just a bookkeeper.
Okay, I have an analogy for this divide between bookkeepers and CPAs. Tell me if this works.
Let's hear it.
Let's look at the medical field. Bookkeepers are like the daily fitness trackers, your Apple Watch or Whoop strap. They are constantly monitoring the heart rate, the sleep cycles, the daily steps. They track the minute-by-minute vital signs of the business.
Right.
Tax CPAs, on the other hand, are the emergency room surgeons or the oncologists.
I like where this is going.
Absolutely need the high-level ER surgeon if things go catastrophic, or if you need a major, complex intervention. But if the patient, the business, wants to actually live a long, healthy, optimized life, they need the daily fitness tracker to tell them when they are eating too much junk or not sleeping enough.
Yeah, they need that constant data.
Both roles are vital, but traditionally, the surgeon looks down on the fitness tracker. But if they don't talk to each other, the patient suffers.
That is a highly accurate and illuminating analogy. The traditional CPA often looks at bookkeeping as menial data entry, but Nancy's entire mission is to tear down that wall.
How so?
She argues that if the bookkeeper is trained to prepare the books specifically so they are tax ready, meaning they understand the tax implications of how a transaction is categorized in February, it completely transforms the financial ecosystem.
That makes total sense.
Books evolve from being a painful, once-a-year chore done just to appease the IRS into a real-time, highly tuned managerial engine. The business owner can make aggressive, confident decisions in July because they know their daily tracker is perfectly synced with the surgeon's requirements.
But here is the massive catch, the wall that every single one of these advisors eventually hits. You cannot be this hands-on. You cannot act as a dedicated business therapist.
No.
You cannot have these deep, hour-long, unbilled conversations about a client's marriage or their motorhome dreams if you do not have the time.
Time is the ultimate constraint.
Accountants, particularly small firm owners, are notoriously chronically strapped for time. They are drowning in emails, software updates, and deadlines. So how do these specific leaders find the bandwidth to be so empathetic?
They find it by aggressively, almost ruthlessly, streamlining their internal culture and their operational workflows. You cannot scale a bespoke service business effectively unless you systemize the mundane tasks so thoroughly that it frees up your calendar to humanize the exceptional moments.
I want to dig into that because scaling a service business usually destroys the very empathy that made it successful in the first place. Jennifer Green provided one of the best analogies for this painful growth process I have ever heard. She calls it the hockey analogy.
It perfectly encapsulates the psychological evolution and the growing pains of a founder.
Okay, here is how she breaks it down for the listener. When you first start your business, you are the star player out there on the ice. You are taking the shots, you are scoring the goals, the fans are cheering for your specific jersey.
You're in it.
The clients love you, and they only want to talk to you. You are in the flow of the game. But as the business grows, you start getting tired. You physically cannot play every position on the ice for a full 60 minutes. So you have to skate over to the bench, you become the general manager or the head coach.
And this is the first major identity crisis for a founder.
Right. You are still very close to the action. You can feel the cold of the ice. You are calling the plays. You are shouting at the refs. But you are no longer the one holding the stick. You have to trust the players you drafted.
Which is hard.
Very hard. And then eventually, to truly scale a massive enterprise, you have to leave the bench entirely. You have to put on a suit, take an elevator up to the arena's rafters, and sit in the owner's box.
Psychologically, moving to the owner's box is incredibly difficult for entrepreneurs, especially those who built their business on their personal technical skills. You lose the direct, visceral connection to the ice.
You lose that high.
You lose that immediate dopamine hit of solving a client's problem yourself and having them thank you profusely. You feel disconnected. But from the owner's box, you have a completely different, vastly superior vantage point.
You can see everything.
You can see the whole arena. You can see industry trends. You can secure financing. You can negotiate stadium deals. Your job is no longer to be the star. Your job is to build a franchise that empowers your team to be the stars. Your job is to build something that lives on without you needing to lace up your skates every morning.
Diana Gleason had to learn this lesson the hard, painful way. She shared this incredible story. She was accepted into this highly exclusive, very expensive leadership program run by Gary Vaynerchuk.
Oh, Gary V?
Yeah. She flies to New York. She is in this room surrounded by incredibly successful millionaires. Deepak Chopra is literally on stage giving a keynote speech. And what is Diana doing?
She's completely ignoring it.
She is physically hiding underneath her desk in the back of the room, frantically typing on Slack on her phone. She is desperately sending two-factor authentication bank codes to her team back home because her accounting firm literally could not function for a single hour without her being the central router of information.
That is the ultimate textbook symptom of a founder who refuses to leave the ice. She was the absolute catastrophic bottleneck of her own company's workflow.
Exactly.
And that pressure drove her to a breaking point. She was so burnt out that she seriously considered selling the entire business for a 7-figure buyout just to escape the daily anxiety of being needed for every micro decision.
She didn't sell. Instead, she decided to completely rebuild the plumbing of her company. She hired a specialized systems coach, Alyssa Lang, and they built out a formal pod structure.
Let's break down how a pod structure differs from a traditional firm.
Go for it.
In a traditional small firm, it looks like an hourglass. You have a bunch of clients at the top, a bunch of staff at the bottom, and the founder is the tiny pinch point in the middle where all communication has to pass through.
A recipe for a heart attack?
Precisely. A pod structure breaks the client base into smaller, autonomous groups. Instead of every client emailing Diana, a client is assigned to a specific pod.
Okay.
That pod consists of a dedicated account manager who handles communication, a senior bookkeeper who handles complex strategy, and a junior bookkeeper who handles data entry. The client talks to the account manager. The manager talks to the team. Problems are solved laterally.
So Diana doesn't even see most of the issues.
Right. Diana only steps in if an issue is so complex or severe that it bypasses all three levels of defense.
She systemized the mundane communication so that her team could operate without her permission.
And counterintuitively, by systemizing the structure, she actually protected the empathy and the culture of the firm.
That's interesting. How does that work?
Scaling a service business usually destroys culture because the founder gets too busy to care about their employees, and the employees burn out from taking on too many clients without support. But when you build pods, the team feels supported, and they have the bandwidth to actually care about the client.
Look at Jennifer Green. She is managing a team of 15 women, fully remote, spread across 4 different time zones in Canada. How do you possibly maintain a cohesive, empathetic culture when nobody shares a water cooler or a physical office? You can't just order pizzas on a Friday.
You have to engineer moments of connection.
And her engineering of this is brilliant. She gives every single employee a $200 charity stipend every year. But the rule is the employee has to choose a local charity to donate it to and then share why they chose it with the team.
Brilliance of that initiative isn't just the philanthropic impact, though that is wonderful. The true ROI is what Jennifer learns about the humans working for her.
Yeah.
Through this $200 stipend, she discovers that one employee is fiercely passionate about local dog rescues. Another is deeply committed to supporting Indigenous community causes. Another donates to Hope Air, a charity that provides flights for people needing critical medical treatments.
She discovers their core values.
She builds deep, authentic, emotional connections with her remote team because she takes the time to understand what drives them outside of working hours.
Which naturally brings up the eternal, highly debated question in entrepreneurial circles. Is work-life balance just a complete fabricated lie? We hear so much about it on LinkedIn and in self-help books, but then you look at the reality of these highly successful people and their schedules seem absolutely chaotic.
I think the term balance is what causes the frustration. Balance implies a static equilibrium. It implies a perfect, unwavering 50-50 split on a seesaw that never tips. And for anyone building a business or pushing for high-level success, a static 50-50 split is a mathematical myth.
Right.
What these leaders strive for instead is what Diana refers to as work-life alignment.
Let me challenge this because I look at Justin Stevens' schedule, and I don't know if I call it alignment. During tax season, which lasts for months, he admits to working from 6:00 a.m. straight through to midnight.
It's intense.
He realized he desperately needed to take care of his physical health because he was developing severe shoulder arthritis and his weight had ballooned to 310 pounds. He literally couldn't lift his young kids without pain.
Awful.
So what is his solution? He doesn't magically carve out 3 hours in the middle of the day to go to a luxury spa and meditate. No. At 10 p.m., after finally putting his kids to bed, he drops to the floor of his office and does 20 minutes of diamond push-ups until his arms shake. And then he sits back in his chair, opens his laptop, and grinds until midnight. He lost 70 pounds doing this. Honestly, is that admirable alignment? Or is that just toxic hustle culture masquerading as discipline? Is he just sprinting toward a heart attack?
That is exactly the nuance we need to explore.
Yeah.
If Justin maintained that 6 a.m. to midnight schedule, with late-night floor push-ups 365 days a year, then yes, that is toxic hustle culture, and it will end in catastrophic burnout.
Right.
But he does this during tax season. In the accounting world, tax season is an immovable, externally forced crisis. The deadlines are set by the federal government. You cannot change them.
You can't ask the IRS for a mental health day.
Exactly. So in that specific window of extreme pressure, alignment does not look like balance. Alignment looks like brutal prioritization. He could have easily said, I'm too busy doing 7,000 tax returns. I'll worry about my weight in May.
But he didn't.
He knew his kids needed him to be healthy now, so he aligned his limited time with his absolute highest priorities, his client's survival and his own physical capability. It's ugly, it's painful, but it is deeply intentional.
Ryan Brinkman offers a slightly different version of this intentionality, maybe a bit less grueling. He has 5 daughters, and he is running multiple companies. So his approach to alignment is a concept he calls the therapy couch.
I love this concept.
When he gets home from the office, he doesn't pour a drink and check out in front of the TV. If he walks in and his kids are arguing, he immediately intercepts. He sits with them on the therapy couch for 30 to 40 minutes. He digs into their emotions, asks them why they're upset, and stays deeply, patiently curious about their feelings.
That takes so much energy.
He institutes hard boundaries around family meals. He got his pilot's license not to fly billionaires, but so he can fly his own family in his Piper Aztec on weekends.
The common denominator between Justin's midnight push-ups and Ryan's therapy couch is intentionality. They refuse to be passive victims of their schedules.
Yeah.
When Ryan is at work, he is executing at the highest level. When he is home, he sets a hard boundary so that he is fiercely, unapologetically present with his daughters.
It's about being fully present wherever your feet are currently planted, which brings us to the great disruptor, the looming shadow over all of this. Because you can have the best culture, the most empathetic advisory skills, and the best pod structure in the world, but there is a technological earthquake happening that threatens to upend the mechanics of everything we've talked about.
You're talking about AI.
I'm talking about artificial intelligence.
The accounting industry is currently staring directly down the barrel of generative AI. And what is so valuable about these transcripts is that they provide two very distinct, incredibly valid perspectives on how leaders should navigate this uncertainty.
Let's start with Jennifer Green, because her approach to AI is aggressive, proactive, and honestly a little scary in its ambition.
Yeah, really.
She decided her team couldn't just casually read about AI on the weekends. They had to live it. So she implemented a 90-day efficiency sprint. She literally intentionally reduced her entire firm's client capacity to 75%.
She capped their revenue potential temporarily just to force them to have the breathing room required to learn AI.
That is a massive financial gamble, but a brilliant long-term play.
She told her 15 staff members, "Go into our software, challenge every single thing we do. Set up auto-publish rules in Dext, start querying ChatGPT, start running spreadsheets through Claude, find the bottlenecks and break them."
Her mental model for AI is fascinating. She treats tools like ChatGPT or Claude not as infallible oracles, but as highly eager, exceptionally fast, but inherently flawed interns.
Exactly. An intern who drank too much coffee. If a senior team member used to spend 3 agonizing hours pulling messy sales data from a client's Shopify store, dumping it into Excel, and manually formatting it to calculate varying sales tax rates across different U.S. states and Canadian provinces, the AI intern can now write a script and format that data in 5 minutes.
It eliminates the soul-crushing drudgery of data manipulation.
The BET. And this is a massive blinking red warning light for anyone listening who is currently using AI to run their business. You cannot trust the eager intern implicitly.
No, you can't. Jennifer shared a story that perfectly illustrates this danger. We'll call it the cookie hallucination.
This is a textbook example of how large language models can fail catastrophically when applied to rigid mathematics without supervision.
So Jennifer has a client who runs a consumer packaged goods company, specifically selling cookies. The client urgently needs to know their exact sales volume to plan their next manufacturing run. Jennifer takes the raw, messy sales reports and drops them into Claude AI, asking it to summarize the total units sold.
And Claude instantly spits out a beautifully formatted table with the numbers.
Right. If Jennifer was lazy, she would have just copy-pasted that table into an email and sent it to the CEO. But she is a professional, so she checks the work against the raw data.
And what did she find?
She realizes Claude literally doubled the client's cookie inventory out of thin air. Here is how the AI messed up. The raw data had an entry that said 1 case of cookies and another line defining that a case holds 12 bags. The AI, trying to be helpful, looked at that text and counted both the 12 individual bags and the 1 case as separate additive items.
Oh, man.
It told the client they sold 24 bags instead of 12.
Crucial for listeners to understand why this happens. AI models like ChatGPT or Claude are not calculators. They are predictive text engines. They are predicting the most likely next word based on patterns in their training data.
Right.
They don't fundamentally understand the physical reality that the 12 bags are inside the case. They just see 2 numbers and add them together.
And think about the real-world consequence of that math error. If Jennifer hadn't caught that, the client would have looked at that report, thought their demand had doubled, and ordered a massive, incredibly expensive production run from their factory based entirely on hallucinated demand.
They would have thousands of cookies rotting in a warehouse.
It would have cost them tens of thousands of dollars and potentially bankrupted a small brand.
It highlights the absolute necessity of human oversight. AI will do the heavy lifting of the formatting and the basic arithmetic, but the human must supply the context, the skepticism, and the common sense.
It's exactly like the current state of self-driving cars. When you are on a straight, clear highway in Arizona and the lines are perfectly painted, the autopilot is a miracle. It saves you so much energy.
Totally.
You do not want to fall asleep at the wheel when you hit a messy construction zone in a city center with weird detours, faded lines, and cones everywhere. That cookie hallucination, that is the construction zone. The AI doesn't know what to do with the cones, so it just runs them over.
That is a perfect analogy. And this exact fear of the construction zone highlights Ryan Brinkman's perspective on AI, which is much more cautious and defensive.
Yeah, Ryan tells the story about going to a highly exclusive Silicon Valley software partner council. He is sitting in a room with all these tech-forward firm owners, and they're all bragging about building custom GPTs and feeding their entire firm's data into these models.
Right.
And Ryan admits he felt like a total dinosaur in the room because he raised his hand and said, "I'm not doing any of that yet."
Yeah.
But his reasoning isn't that he's a Luddite who fears technology. His reasoning is pure, unadulterated risk management.
He brings up a point that almost every tech evangelist conveniently ignores: data liability.
Right. He points out that the AICPA, which is the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, basically the national governing body that sets the ethical and professional standards for the industry, has serious documented reservations about feeding sensitive financial data into open source AI models.
Yeah.
He looks around the room and says, "Guys, our malpractice insurance companies don't even have a framework for how to handle an AI data breach yet."
This is a phenomenal grounding point. In the gold rush to be perceived as cutting edge, many professionals are recklessly feeding highly confidential client data, social security numbers, proprietary profit margins, unreleased merger details into language models.
It's terrifying.
If that data is breached, or worse, if that data is ingested to train a public model and then regurgitated to a competitor who asks the right prompt, the liability is catastrophic.
Yeah.
You aren't just facing an embarrassed client. You are facing federal lawsuits and the loss of your license.
Ryan is choosing to wait. He is waiting for the insurance industry to catch up, and he is waiting for Microsoft and other major software providers to establish truly secure, ring-fenced, enterprise-grade AI environments before he puts his clients' data at risk.
This is the paradox of modern business advice. It isn't sexy. It won't go viral on Twitter. But Ryan's caution is the exact type of boring, highly disciplined advice that saves companies from million-dollar lawsuits.
So if we look at the macro picture, with technology rapidly automating the actual mechanics of the job, meaning the data entry, the categorizing, the basic math, are all being handled by software, what is left for the human to do? What are the timeless rules for success moving forward?
If the software does the accounting, the accountant must do the leading.
Boom. The accountant must do the leading. I love that. Which brings us to the final piece of our deep dive today. We have pulled 3 rapid-fire pieces of wisdom from these transcripts that I genuinely believe serve as a masterclass in modern leadership.
These are great.
These are mental models for success, regardless of whether you sell software, bake cookies, or file taxes. Let's start with Nancy McClelland. Her core advice for anyone trying to build a career is simple but difficult. Don't wait to be asked.
It sounds cliché until you realize how deeply conditioned we are to do exactly the opposite. From kindergarten through corporate life, we are trained to sit at our desks, raise our hands, and wait for an authority figure to give us permission. We wait to be invited to speak at a meeting. We wait for a promotion to be offered. We wait for someone to recognize our hidden talents.
Nancy realized that if you want a stage, you cannot wait for the theater owner to call you. You have to go into the woods, chop down the trees, and build the stage yourself.
I love that visual.
She wanted to educate business owners on a larger scale. She didn't wait for a university to offer her a professorship. She started cold pitching local chambers of commerce in Chicago. She built her own Ask a CPA online community from scratch. She aggressively exercised what she calls her ask muscle. She faced the friction of rejection daily until she became undeniable.
And she paired that aggressive action with a very deep framework for self-reflection. She talks extensively about finding your ikigai.
Okay, let's break that down because I hear this term thrown around a lot in startup culture. What exactly is an ikigai?
It's a Japanese concept that roughly translates to a reason for being. Visually, imagine a Venn diagram with 4 overlapping circles. Circle 1 is, what do you love doing? Circle 2, what are you naturally good at? Circle 3, what can you get paid for? And Circle 4, what does the world actually need?
Finding the center of that diagram sounds like finding a unicorn.
It is incredibly difficult because if you miss even one circle, you experience massive friction. If you do what you love and what you're good at, but society doesn't need it or won't pay for it, you are a starving artist.
Right.
If you do what pays well and what you're good at, but you don't love it, you are a wealthy, burned-out corporate drone.
Nancy used this framework to make a massive pivot in her business. She realized she actually loved doing the gritty daily bookkeeping. She was great at it. But when she looked at the "what does the world need" circle, she realized society didn't need another person doing bank reconciliations.
Society desperately needed her voice.
Exactly. They needed her ability to teach, to bridge the gap between scared business owners and intimidating tax codes. So she intentionally gave up doing the daily books for her clients to focus all her energy on the advisory and educational impact.
That requires immense maturity. To actively stop doing a task you enjoy simply because you recognize it isn't the highest value use of your time or talents.
Justin Stevens offers another incredibly powerful mental model for facing friction. He quotes the British comedian Jimmy Carr, of all people.
Great quote.
The quote is, "The life you want is on the other side of the work you're avoiding."
That is a truth bomb that applies to absolutely every facet of human endeavor.
I physically felt that one in my chest when I read it. The life you want is on the other side of the work you're avoiding. Justin applied this ruthlessly to his own life. He avoided accounting for years because it was stuffy.
Right.
But when his dad died, the life he wanted, a life where he could provide for his family and honor his father's legacy, was on the other side of the grueling enrolled agent exam. When he was 310 pounds, the life he wanted, being able to play with his kids without pain, was on the other side of doing push-ups at midnight when he was exhausted.
We live in a culture that constantly looks for the hack. We want the easy route, the passive income stream, the magic pill, the AI prompt that will do our jobs for us.
Yes, everyone wants a shortcut.
But profound, lasting transformation, whether it's fixing your physical health, passing a federal licensing exam, or scaling a seven-figure business, requires facing the difficult, boring, uncomfortable work head-on. There is no shortcut around the mountain. You have to climb over it.
And our final mental model comes from Diana Gleason. Her driving mantra for her agency is 10x is easier than 2x.
This is a concept popularized by Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and it is a fascinating psychological paradox. On the surface, it makes no mathematical sense. How can growing a business tenfold be easier than just doubling it?
Right. 10x sounds terrifying.
But here is why it works. If you set a goal for 2x growth, incremental growth, you try to achieve it by working slightly harder within your existing flawed systems.
Yeah.
You keep all your bad habits, you keep your micromanagement tendencies, you just try to squeeze a little more efficiency out of them.
It's like trying to pedal a rusty bicycle faster. You can pedal twice as fast, but you're just going to exhaust yourself and the chain might break.
Exactly. But if you aim for 10x growth, you instantly realize a profound truth. It is physically impossible to get there with your current systems. You cannot pedal a bicycle 10 times faster to break the sound barrier. You have to stop pedaling entirely. You have to invent an airplane.
Love that.
Aiming for 10x forces you to completely destroy and rebuild your life, your business structure, and your mindset. It forces you to drop your excuses instantly.
Because what worked before just won't work anymore.
Exactly. You can't be the bottleneck anymore, so you are forced to build a pod structure. You can't do the $15 an hour tasks anymore, so you are forced to delegate ruthlessly.
Yeah.
10x is easier because it demands a completely new, vastly more efficient vehicle, whereas 2x just demands that you suffer more in your current.
So I want to turn this directly to you, the person listening to this deep dive right now. Take a hard look at your life this week. What is the work you are currently avoiding? Is it firing a toxic client? Is it having a brutally honest conversation with your spouse on the therapy couch?
Is it learning how to prompt AI instead of fearing it?
Exactly. And look at your goals. Are you exhausted because you are aiming for 2x growth, just trying to pedal the rusty bicycle faster and harder every day, when you should really be aiming for 10x, stepping back, and forcing yourself to design an airplane?
These mental models aren't just motivational quotes. They are tools for ruthless self-auditing. None of the leaders we studied today got to the top by accident, and none of them got there by following the traditional rulebook.
No, they didn't.
They scrutinized their own weaknesses, they hired brilliant people to fill those gaps, and they doubled down on their unique, weird strengths.
Okay, let's bring this all together. We have covered an incredible amount of ground today. We started by looking at the misfit origins of these leaders. The farm kids wanting to fly jets, the dancers recovering from trauma, the English majors selling cars. We saw how those non-linear, messy paths forged a deep, resilient empathy that traditional schooling completely misses.
Watch them take that empathy and weaponize their authenticity. They put on the go-go boots and drop the judgment, using their true personalities to powerfully attract their ideal clients and efficiently repel the wrong ones.
We explored the massive industry-wide shift from historical compliance to forward-looking advisory. They stopped being historians and became co-pilots, acting as business therapists for clients in their most vulnerable, high-stakes moments.
We saw the painful necessity of scaling that human element. We watched founders move from being the star player on the ice to the architect in the owner's box, building pod structures and engineering remote cultures so their teams could thrive without them.
And we navigated the thrilling yet highly hazardous construction zone of AI, balancing the desperate need for technological efficiency with the absolute requirement of human oversight and data security. The ultimate takeaway from this stack of transcripts is that the modern accounting industry, and really modern business in any sector, isn't just about the numbers anymore.
No, it's not.
It is fundamentally, irrevocably about human connection. It's about bringing your whole authentic self to the table.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over as we close out. We have talked extensively about AI's rapidly accelerating ability to process data, automate complex workflows, and eventually provide the right answers instantly.
Right.
As AI inevitably commoditizes raw knowledge, meaning anyone, anywhere with an internet connection can get the correct tax code or a flawless financial projection in 5 seconds, what happens to your value in the marketplace?
If everyone has the answer is worthless.
Precisely. Will our unique human quirks, our hard-earned empathy, our ability to read the tension in a room, and even our perceived flaws like a dancer's nonlinear resume or a bizarre love for 1960s go-go boots become the only truly valuable professional assets we have left to sell?
In a fast-approaching future where the machines do all the math flawlessly, your weirdness might just be your ultimate competitive advantage. So when you look at that rigid binary spreadsheet of your own life and career tomorrow morning, maybe it's finally time to put on the go-go boots. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Protea Conversations. Embrace your inner misfit toy, stop avoiding the hard work, build the airplane, and we'll see you next time.